You wake up one morning to find that your electricity bill has doubled, or worse, your power goes out for hours at a time. Now, picture that happening, not just in your home, but across entire states. Sounds like a nightmare, right? Well, this could soon become a reality if Canada follows through with its threat to halt electricity exports to the US. But why would Canada take such a drastic step? And how would it affect you and your everyday life? Let's dive into this high-stakes trade dispute and what's really at stake for both nations. Today, we're tackling a major international issue that could hit both American and Canadian homes hard: Canada's potential decision to stop exporting electricity to the US. If you're living in states like New York, Michigan, or Minnesota, this could have a huge impact on your energy bills, your job, and even your daily routine. But this isn't just about power outages. It's part of a larger, escalating trade war sparked by President Trump's tariffs on Canadian goods. In this video, we'll break down why this is happening, what's at stake, and how these changes could affect your life in ways you might not expect. Stick around to find out how Canada's energy battle could ripple through the economy and your pocketbook. In March 2025, President Trump announced plans to impose a 25% tariff on Canadian goods, including steel and aluminum, alongside a 10% tariff on energy imports. The Canadian government, especially in Ontario, has strongly opposed this move. The province's premier, Doug Ford, warned that Ontario might retaliate by cutting off electricity exports to key U.S. states that heavily rely on Canadian power. These states include New York, Michigan, and Minnesota, which get a large portion of their electricity from Canada, particularly during peak demand seasons like winter and summer. The idea of cutting off the electricity supply might sound drastic, but it's a serious threat that could lead to severe energy shortages in parts of the U.S. For context, in 2023 alone, Canada exported over 33 terawatt-hours of electricity, to the United States, making Canada the largest electricity supplier to the U.S. This amounts to around 85% of the total electricity imported into the U.S. Without Canadian energy, many states would face serious blackouts and spikes in energy prices, especially during times of high demand. Well, for households in states like New York and Michigan, rising electricity costs could lead to higher monthly bills. For businesses, particularly those in manufacturing, agriculture, and technology, the cost of doing business could increase significantly as energy prices skyrocket. This would likely lead to job cuts or reduced hours, further impacting the average worker's paycheck. While cutting off electricity seems like a headline-grabbing move, Ontario is also exploring other ways to retaliate. Premier Ford suggested that Ontario might impose a surcharge on every megawatt of electricity exported to the U.S., effectively raising the costs for American consumers and businesses. In addition, he hinted at terminating a $100 million deal with Elon Musk's Starlink internet service, which provides satellite internet across Ontario. Ford's administration has also considered removing all American alcohol from the Liquor Control Board stores in Ontario as symbolic gestures against U.S. tariffs. These are bold steps, but they underscore just how serious the situation could become. Ontario, as the economic powerhouse of Canada, contributes over 38% to Canada's GDP and is particularly vulnerable to the economic consequences of these tariffs. The auto industry and steel production, for example, could face massive job losses, especially in cities like Windsor and Hamilton, which are heavily dependent on U.S. trade. For everyday Canadians, a potential increase in energy prices could make heating your home or running your air conditioner during summer a lot more expensive. Small businesses might struggle with higher operating costs, leading to fewer job opportunities or reduced wages. For consumers, if the Starlink deal with Musk is terminated, it could delay or hinder internet access in rural and remote areas where high-speed internet is a luxury. Canada plays an irreplaceable role in the U.S. energy market. In 2024, the U.S. imported $97 billion worth of energy, from Canada, which made Canada the largest foreign energy supplier to the United States. This included crude oil, natural gas, and electricity. The Keystone XL pipeline and Enbridge pipelines are vital to moving Canadian crude oil into the U.S. Without these exports, refineries in the Midwest and Northeast U.S. states would struggle to operate. The U.S. is the world's top producer of energy, but it still relies heavily on Canadian resources to meet regional and industrial demand. In 2023, Canada supplied 60% of the U.S. crude oil imports, and it provides 8.1 billion cubic feet of natural gas per day, which is essential for winter heating and industrial power generation. Without these supplies, the U.S. could face higher energy costs and increased competition for resources, impacting industries like automotive, technology, and defense. For American families, this could mean increased heating bills during winter and higher fuel prices. For industries relying on affordable energy, like manufacturing, agriculture, and technology, higher operational costs could drive up product prices, leading to inflation. This would likely hit consumers hardest, as everything from food to tech products becomes more expensive. Given the uncertainty of U.S. trade relations, Canada has begun to diversify its energy markets, especially for crude oil and natural gas. In early 2024, the Trans Mountain Expansion (TMX) pipeline was completed, which connects Alberta's oil sands to the Pacific coast. This pipeline enables Canada to ship crude oil to China, Japan, and South Korea. In fact, Canada's oil exports to China surged by $2 billion in 2024, reflecting the growing demand for Canadian energy in Asia. The completion of the TMX pipeline has allowed Canada to pivot away from the U.S. market and reduce its reliance on the U.S. for energy exports. The Canadian government sees this diversification as essential for protecting the country's energy future amidst growing trade tensions with its southern neighbor. For Canadians, this shift means that Canada is less dependent on the U.S. market, which could shield the Canadian economy from potential future trade disputes. However, it also means that the energy sector may face disruptions as they adjust to new markets. For American consumers, reduced access to affordable Canadian oil could raise gas prices and energy costs across the board. If Canada moves forward with these retaliatory measures, the U.S. could face supply shortages, leading to rising energy prices and higher costs for everyday goods. This would likely cause inflation to rise, making it harder for average Americans to afford basic necessities. Industries that rely heavily on stable and cheap energy, like manufacturing, could face serious disruptions, leading to job cuts and reduced economic output. For Canada, however, the political fallout would be severe. Crude oil exports account for a significant portion of Canada's GDP, and any disruptions could put pressure on provincial budgets, especially in Alberta, which is the country's largest oil producer. This could lead to higher unemployment in Canada's energy sector and slower economic growth. For Americans, rising energy costs and disruptions in energy supply could lead to power outages, job losses, and increased prices on everyday goods, from gasoline to electronics. For Canadians, these trade disruptions could slow down job creation and reduce the country's economic growth, especially in energy-dependent provinces like Alberta. Despite these tensions, Canada and the U.S. have historically been close allies. But with trade policies becoming more protectionist under President Trump, the two countries could be heading toward a new era of trade conflict. Canada's retaliation could strain U.S.-Canada relations for years to come. There is also the question of the USMCA trade agreement, which could face major hurdles if these disputes continue to escalate. At the same time, there is hope for negotiations and diplomatic resolutions, especially with Canada looking to diversify its energy markets and reduce reliance on the U.S. For now, however, the focus remains on whether Canada will follow through with these drastic measures. The next steps in this trade dispute will likely shape the economic landscape for both nations in the years to come. For American consumers, escalating tariffs and trade restrictions could lead to higher prices on goods and fewer job opportunities. For Canadians, these trade issues could cause economic strain and higher taxes, which would likely impact families across the country. In conclusion, the potential halt of electricity exports from Canada to the U.S. is a serious and unprecedented move that could have a far-reaching impact on both countries. From higher energy costs and job losses to strained diplomatic relations, the consequences are still unfolding. As always, we'll be keeping a close eye on this developing story. If you found this analysis helpful, Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like the video. Drop a comment below to share your thoughts. How do you think this trade conflict will impact everyday life on both sides of the border? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Reserves of essential minerals such as nickel and aluminum underpin major manufacturing processes across American factories. This robust relationship, built on mutual benefit and shared infrastructure, has long been taken for granted, until now. Now, imagine if this well-oiled system were suddenly disrupted. The steady hum of power in your neighborhood might be replaced with uncertainty. Hospitals could be forced to operate on emergency generators. Commuters might face unexpected delays. And a surge in fuel prices could affect everything from your daily commute to the cost of goods on store shelves. Chapter 2. A comment sparks a controversy. It all began on a seemingly inconsequential evening in late 2024 at a private dinner held at Mar-a-Lago. Amid the clink of glasses and polite conversation, then President-elect Donald Trump casually remarked that Canada would fare much better as America's 51st state. What started as offhand banter soon ignited a firestorm of controversy. In the days that followed, on December 10th, Trump took to his favorite social media platform, Truth Social, referring to Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau not as the head of a sovereign nation, but as Governor Justin Trudeau of the great state of Canada. This provocative statement quickly spread across the internet, drawing a mix of amusement, disbelief, and outrage from both sides of the border. By December 18th, the remark had grown into a national conversation, with memes, heated debates, and even unofficial polls indicating that nearly 40% of active social media users had weighed in on the issue. These remarks, while initially dismissed as one more of Trump's flamboyant off-the-cuff comments, soon escalated into a serious diplomatic issue. The words exchanged in a private dinner soon reverberated through international politics, raising questions about the future of the US-Canada relationship, a question that could have far-reaching consequences on our daily lives. Chapter 3. The US strikes first. Following the incendiary comments, the United States wasted no time in responding. In January 2025, President Trump announced a sweeping 25% tariff on all Canadian imports, a move designed to pressure Canada into playing by America's rules. The rationale behind this decision was stark. The US leadership argued that the country was subsidizing Canada for nearly $100 billion and that such economic arrangements were unsustainable if not reformed. The tariffs, which were set to be implemented on February 4th, targeted a broad spectrum of goods, from automobiles and machinery to food products and raw materials. Economic analysts warned that these tariffs could lead to a 1.2 to 5.1% increase in consumer prices in key sectors, creating ripples throughout the American economy almost immediately. Chapter 4. Canada's fiery retaliation. Canada, however, was not one to take such challenges lightly. In a rapid and decisive counterattack, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his government announced a series of retaliatory measures. On February 2nd, just a day after the US tariffs were unveiled, Canada declared its own set of tariffs targeting roughly $155 billion worth of American imports. This package included a direct trade penalty of $30 billion and extended into other economic sanctions, such as restricting access to certain critical exports like minerals and energy products. The Canadian government also signaled that it was actively exploring further avenues to counter American economic pressure. Behind the scenes, discussions were underway to cut off American companies from bidding on lucrative government contracts and to encourage the diversification of trade partnerships away from a traditionally US-dominated market. Despite the initial shockwaves, both nations eventually agreed to a temporary 30-day pause in tariffs to allow for further negotiations, a pause that, in itself, did little to quell the underlying tension. Chapter 5. The threat of an electricity cutoff. Perhaps the most alarming prospect emerging from this escalating dispute is the possibility that Canada might cut off its electricity exports to key US states. Ontario's Premier, Doug Ford, has made no secret of the fact that if the tariffs remain in place, provinces like Ontario might have no choice but to cease sending electricity south of the border. In states such as Minnesota, Michigan, and New York, where millions of people depend on this steady supply of power, the consequences could be catastrophic. Analysts have warned that even a temporary interruption in this cross-border energy flow could result in prolonged blackouts lasting several hours during peak periods. The economic repercussions would be severe. A report by the U.S. Department of Energy estimated that between 2003 and 2012, weather-related power outages cost the U.S. economy an annual average of $18 billion to $33 billion.